right. Hello. Welcome back to Time to Talk Titanic. Today we will be discussing unanswered questions part 2. Louie, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing amazing. It's a Sunday. I'm not at work. I'm just living life to the fullest. Sat at home,
You're making it count. To make
making it count.
I
Such
like
a
that.
nerd. Nerd alert. Sat on a Titanic podcast.
All right, Arron, how are you today?
I'm good, Presley. Yeah, I'm really good. Thank you. My soul has been healed because I've had like a stressful couple of weeks, but then I've been dog sitting this weekend, and I just think dogs are just good. They're just good for the soul. If you don't own a dog, reach out to someone that does and ask if you can you own 3 dogs,
I
Dave.
have 3, yeah.
Your soul has transcended. Your soul is already in heaven. That's how good dogs are. It's
I've
just
got
it's
one, and that's enough.
it's
Oh,
exactly
I'm dying, but it's worth it.
it
I
is
have
worth it.
2 chihuahuas.
Oh, Chihuahuas are super cute. A lot of people don't like tiny dogs, and it's not my preference, but I still love them. I just love all dogs. So yeah,
Aaron,
I'm
you
really
said you've
good.
had a stressful couple of weeks. I mean, we met up with each other just over a week ago. Are you saying that started the downfall, or?
Yep, that was it. The minute you left, I just spiraled. I just, I was
Oh,
like
it's
in a
when I left.
gutter. I had like a bottle of rum in a brown bag. It was awful. It was yeah, it was just actually that's something we can discuss. Louis, myself, met for the first time in person.
Yeah,
because
we shared a
we'd never
sensual
met.
kiss, and
And then Chandler arrived and it got awkward fast. But yeah, Chandler was there too. So Louis got to meet Chandler for the first time as well. So it was really
so
cool.
hot in person.
It was,
Oh my god, he's so hot. And his
and
voice.
yeah. Bye.
Yeah, okay. David, how are you?
I'm doing splendid. I'm very glad to be back. I'm just wondering if there might be a chance for my parents to bring any of my dogs here to show on camera, but they're not there. Otherwise, yeah, I'm just glad to be back. It's a good time, I reckon.
Good. Well, all right. Sebastian, how are you?
Very good. I've been out volunteering on the trams today, so I'm a very happy chappy.
That's good. I'm doing
Ready
good.
to be back
too.
here.
Presley, how are you?
I'm
How are
doing
you?
good.
The most important question.
Guys, guess what? I'm going to Las Vegas in 2 weeks to see Jimmy Buffett, and I'm like, Mom, we have to go to the Titanic exhibit. I haven't seen it since I was 10.
Absolutely.
So I barely remember it.
Damn.
So I'm like, we're so going.
I can't believe I've been to Vegas and my parents didn't even mention a Titanic exhibit. Fuming.
Well, I'll
I
send
wonder
pictures.
if it's well advertised. And if it is, where? Is it just random posters kind of dotted around, or is it I'm assuming there wouldn't be a built. I mean, there might be actually. I'd assume that
It's
some
in the
kind of
Luxor Hotel.
is that quite a famous, quite a known.
Yeah,
Or
so it's in the Luxor
yeah.
Hotel, which is like the pyramid-shaped hotel. And they got
Oh,
ancient
okay.
Egypt thing going on in there, but then there's also the Titanic exhibit.
I stayed near there. I stayed in Circus. That has a massive theme park inside, and there was a roller coaster. It was great.
Nice.
America's crazy.
It is so. I was about to say weird, but I didn't want to insult Presley. It's crazy.
Land of the free, home of the weird.
I mean,
Just-
yeah, we'll take it.
I was looking at the analytics on Anchor FM, which is the platform that I upload the audio to, so it goes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that. And I was really surprised actually, quite a huge, it's over 60% of our audience is American, and then it's 30 or no under 30 UK. I kind of actually thought it would be more similar, or it would be more UK. So I was actually quite interested with that.
They like our accents, maybe.
That honestly, that could be it.
Is that
That
accent?
could be it. Yeah.
You just think that's American in a nutshell.
Well,
Just this British accents, just like when who's a thing. It's oh.
We'll let Presley answer that one.
I
It's-
want
it's-
to know how it's been
What?
going over there with the Queen's death and everything.
I was just about to say it's kind of unfortunate that Louis and I, because when we met up, it was the day after she had passed away. So, and we were meant to be going on the Royal Yacht Britannia, which was her kind of like holiday and party yacht. It's in The Crown, season 1 of The Crown. You see, it's like a CGI version of it, and they build like a set, but it is that ship. But obviously they closed it, which I think was the right thing to do, because it would have felt a bit icky kind of walking around it, knowing that she's like dead, and you're kind of, they would have exploded with ticket sales, despite the fact that it is the #1 tourist attraction in the UK, which I think is really odd, because if you don't know Edinburgh, which I think a lot of people listening won't, it's quite out the way. And I live right next to it, but even to get to my house, like if I say to people, even from Edinburgh, oh, I live here, they tend to not know where I am. So the fact that enough people know about the yacht and go there, and yet it seems like it's so out of the way, it's quite strange. But we were meant to go there, and my thought was to film it and do a kind of vlog almost and upload it to here. But obviously we couldn't do that, which is understandable.
It's weird. I've lived in London all my life, and obviously the Queen spends some time in London, like, you know, Buckingham Palace is in London, and then the week I go to Scotland and she's in Scotland and she dies, and it was like, that's crazy. I just felt so somber
Suspicious,
as well.
actually. Suspicious.
No, don't look at Liz Truss, not me.
Louie,
Angel
you
of
might
death.
have been in the right place, right time. I'm kind of wondering.
It is suspicious.
No.
It
Our
is
new
suspicious.
Prime Minister saw her the day before, so if you're gonna blame anyone, blame her. But it was really somber. I think walking around, you know, the days in Edinburgh, it was great, and then that day walking down Edinburgh, and everyone was just really like, you could feel the weight of it. And I mean, I'm in no way a royalist. You know, I'm not one of those anti the monarchy things, but I'm just like, yeah, they're a thing we've got, cool, whatever, brings in tourism, that's great. But it just felt very sad the whole time, which I wasn't expecting, you know. But yeah, and I forgot to mention, Arron, they gave me a full refund on the Royal Yacht, and have given me 2 free tickets as a sort of apology. So I can send that voucher to you if you want, and you can go with Paul.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. Paul will refuse. He's a staunch Republican, and Louis knows this. Louis is like, the taxpayer bought that boat for them. It's already ours, so I should not have to pay to go on it. But if I tell him the ticket's free, he might take it. So he'll be like,
That is
that's
an
fair.
option.
Otherwise, I'll just pay like £28 for a flight and go by myself.
That's really nice that they
meet
gave
up
you
with
free
you,
tickets, though. That's really good.
Yeah.
Really nice.
Full refund and a voucher for a free visit when I'm next in Edinburgh.
Good.
Yeah, you can use it any time. I was like, great, I'm back in London. Thanks.
Yeah. If you send them, I'll take Chandler and make you jealous.
Oof.
I'll just take lots of videos with his
Look, as
sultry
long as you and Chandler don't find yourselves a little car in that boat.
voice.
I'm
We'll
fine
do the
with it.
flying pose. I don't know how close you can get to the bow, probably not very close, but we'll find a corner somewhere. We'll find a nice point and we'll just do the flying pose just for you guys. I think that'll be cute.
Arron, is that your phone in your pocket?
We actually went to see as well a play, a one-man show at the Fringe Festival in Edinburgh, myself and Chandler and one of my friends.
Nice.
And it was so good that, you know, one man reenacting all of Titanic, and it was so camp, so funny. I could hear a woman was kind of like getting like emotional, like crying, despite the fact that there's this like bald man with a mustache and a corset pretending to be like old Rose, and then quickly cutting to young Rose and Cal and Ruth and Molly Brown. And it was electric. It was the most, and then it ended with him singing My Heart Will Go On, and the whole room was standing and singing it with him. It was just one of the most electrifying things I've ever experienced.
Did I tell you guys that I'm going to see Gaelic Storm?
You did in the group chat, but it was a while ago. See, Presley's just like hitting us with all these.
I don't know what that is.
Storm. Going to see the.
That's the band that plays in 3rd class. Like, they're a real band.
Oh,
Right.
They're coming
I
here,
don't know
and
that.
I'm going to go dressed as Rose because I want to.
I
I've
want
thought
that
about that from
so
time
much.
to time. Like, it's just actors knowing to play an instrument, but they seem so professional at what they do in that scene.
Yeah.
No,
it's
yeah.
Presley's
Yeah.
band,
It's
And I'm gonna show up in a Rose dress. They're gonna be like, "Oh God, these people! They keep showing up to our shows
Americans.
Right, how's Maggie, guys?
You should do what she does. Get like a big pint of lager and just down it in one. That'd be so funny. So funny.
While standing on her pinky toe.
On your dippy toes, absolutely. I only know the name of that the group because, and this was like years ago. I was watching the videotape Titanic, and to be fair though, it was when the whole film was on the one tape as opposed to like two separate ones, and I just happened to kind of glance at because I used to let the credits play because I really like that version of My Heart Will Go On because it's kind of like it's a slightly longer version and it's got slightly different instrumentation. It's a bit more twinkly, a bit more almost like I Will Always Love You at the end of The Bodyguard. It's got a slightly different sound to it. And can you tell I'm gay? And I just happened to look at the screen at one point and I saw Gaelic Storm and I was like, oh, but I kind of thought it said Garlic Storm. And I was like, is that like a production company? I was like, Garlic Storm, nice. And then I looked and I was like, oh, it's the band. Awesome. But I was like 10, but it's just always stuck because I thought it was a really cool name. See if I could have them play at like my wedding or my funeral or something. That'd be like super cool.
Very two opposites.
Yeah,
my wedding.
yeah.
Why not both?
I'm never going to get baptized. Well, not that I know of. And I can't think of like any other big celebration. Maybe like a birthday. I don't know. That'd be cool.
Either the happiest day of your life or the happiest day of someone else's life.
My enemy's life.
Yeah.
So happy for you, Presley. Honestly, that's like so cool. That's super cool. And I take it are they like, where are they based? Are they American? Are they Irish? Are they, what's their kind of, are they Canadian? Like,
I don't know. I think they are from around where you guys are. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was going to say Gaelic. That's
the name would imply that, but then this show could be called like anything, and we don't necessarily need to be from, So
Wikipedia claims they are American.
Oh, well, there you go. I'm like going purely based on the fact that I'm like, I want them to play the song. I want to wear my dress.
I love that. I love that so much.
It's definitely how it
Exactly.
sounds.
It's gonna be so much fun.
Gonna love vicariously through you. It's like wish fulfillment. I'm super happy for you.
I'm looking forward to the videos.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Our group chat is like insane. I love the things that go on, whether it's Titanic related or anything else.
You should get Arron to go his chat.
But it changes like really quickly. You go from something that's like family friendly to Peggy 18 in an instant.
Yeah, you really do.
It's usually Louie's fault.
I love that. Louie's not just. It's usually Louie that does that. It's Louie's fault.
Today's episode, unanswered questions.
So this is an interesting one, and there's never going to be a way of answering this, which me and Louie discovered that's the case for a lot of these things. I saw a comment on our Facebook group, and obviously they got eaten alive. But do you think anyone, when things were still slightly calm and maybe there was like some cool little vignettes going on, do you think anyone set up their camera and tried to take photos on the deck of Titanic?
I've always wondered this.
I've always wondered.
Do you mean after that it hit the iceberg, or just in general?
Yeah, so there's like stuff. So people are like, standing around in like lifebelts in like the grand staircase, or they're sitting having a coffee or something, and it's like midnight, or it's like 1 a.m. The lifeboats getting uncovered. Like, do you think anyone had not the wherewithal, like this will be worth a lot more by morning, but like maybe they just were like, this is a cool image. I like this.
And then
like,
the camera's just gone down to the Atlantic.
Yeah, like do you think anyone did that?
I guess maybe the one problem with that would be I'm not sure how much light there would have been on deck, and if that would have looked good enough for photography. So
that's why I kind of also mentioned the grand staircase, so like the interior.
If they were inside.
Yeah.
But the interior of the grand staircase, I just dropped a pen. The interior of the grand staircase was actually pretty dark. I mean, in the James Cameron film, it's obviously very lit up. But as we know now, the dome wasn't lit up. The lighting in the Titanic wasn't, it wasn't like modern lights. It wasn't like this like I've got on here where it pierces light at you. They were very like dim sort of light. So it would have been like a dark room at the time. I still don't know if it would have been good enough for a photo. But yeah, I've also always wondered that about the photos. But I mean, looking into it, it's just a bit like.
I would ask.
Cameras would have been different back then. I mean, the priest, don't forget it or whatever.
Father Francis Brown.
Yeah. Like he was taking pictures in daylight, so that wouldn't have been a problem. But like you say, with the lighting and everything and the technology back then, I don't think it would be able to take anything that would be visible enough to say, oh yeah, that's like people with life belts on and stuff.
Yeah.
Mm.
I'm looking
Yeah.
through the pictures now, and they were predominantly outside. There was some inside, but they're sort of like wide open spaces, lots
Yeah.
of windows, that kind of thing.
Mm.
What were
'Cause
you
I
about to say,
suppose-
Presley?
Yeah.
Oh, I was
Sorry.
gonna say, how common would it have been for, just anyone to own a camera then? I mean, like, we're talking about first class passengers probably that could afford it, but
Mhm.
like, how common was it?
I could be making this up, but did they not find either the tripod for the camera or like a case with the lenses and stuff in it? Not the lenses, but like the actual. Maybe I'm thinking of like another. I've maybe seen a photo of it's from like another shipwreck, and someone said like 5 things they found from the Titanic, and it's like, well, it's not actually from the Titanic, but
Right side by any chance?
positive that a tripod or something was found. And probably not many, to be fair. People would have had, cameras and stuff. Like, I'm sure there weren't like 20 people like lining up their I'll be pretty cool. Like, let's see who's got the best like bulb flash. Yeah.
To get into Lifeboat 15.
I suppose actually, to answer my own question and I suppose debunk it, the one photo that Francis Brown took of the dining saloon, it was broad daylight, but it's still like it's really hard to make out details. It's so black and smudged and bloody and quite shadowy.
Yeah, there's a lot of like heavy contrast. There's lots like big whites, like lots of not a lot of grey, I guess, to make up all the detail.
It's similar with the photo in the wireless room. There was like a slight double exposure there.
There was double exposure, yeah.
But also that room is, the only light they've got like a small skylight at the top, which would have given like a small amount of natural daylight. And I think if you look at that photo, even though it's double exposed, if you look through the double exposure, you see it is quite dark and like everything's quite like very fine lines. Like you can see the pipe work and the person sat there, but it is very dim and very dark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, still cool to think of, someone, just not knowing the severity of the situation and thinking, oh, this will be, people will buy this, like newspapers will want these photos when we get towed to Halifax and eventually New York. Like, it's cool to kind of hypothesize.
It would be during the early moments, wouldn't it? Because I think gradually you'd be like, okay, get out of the way.
Yeah. Walter washing over the bridge and collapsible B upside down. Let me just get a picture of collapsible B. Hold on. Cool. Let's go.
Yeah, this person would have been like the first equivalent of the modern day, having your phone out when there's like a tsunami going on and there's like cars with people in them like rushing by you. Like, it's that. Channel 5 did a whole documentary piecing together like mobile phone footage of the Boxing Day tsunami, I think it was, which incredible. Speaks to like, modern technology.
That was like video cameras, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that's a really good documentary though.
Yeah.
Really well done.
Similar with like the Costa Concordia, there's so much footage of that. But I mean, it was 2012, and if you think back to 2012, you think, oh yeah, the cameras are amazing back then. But they weren't. Like if you look at the footage, it's all very grainy footage, and it's all very much full digital cameras with like a 16 megapixel camera and like I don't even think the iPhone had a camera then. I'm not sure. I think it was like the iPhone 2 that got a camera.
Actually, that's a really good point, because the footage from like 9/11 is much better because people were filming that with actual like digital cameras, like proper like cameras. So from their apartments or on the street. The footage of the very first plane hitting was because someone was filming a documentary about firefighters. They were interviewing a firefighter, and they caught the first plane hit. That was like just
Is that
coincidental.
the one where like the shadow goes?
It's
he sort of turns around and you see the
That's
plane.
like the only one.
It's the only footage. Yeah, I did see it was recently re-enhanced, and you can see a lot more detail. But even then, it's still really grainy. And there's I've gone through phases where I've been like, I've always been stuck on Titanic, but then I go on phases like, say, a YouTube video will come up about 9/11, I sort of watch it, and then I'll get into this deep hole. And I remember I watched a 2-hour video once, and it was like this HD camera that someone had in their apartment that they were pointing up at the towers, and like they were just like walking up to the window, walking around, they were talking to people. You saw like the explosion like in the background of the other plane hitting, and like they've started screaming and stuff. And it's like it's an amazing video, and the quality is incredible. I don't know what my point is with that, but yeah.
It's that kind of, I think that's why there's such a huge crossover. It's that kind of voyeuristic, morbid curiosity. You know, there's a reason that people will Google, like on YouTube, like 9/11 jumpers, and will watch videos of people jumping up in like the plaza, like the shelter. You can hear like the thuds of them hitting it, and people watch that, and it's like, and I know about it because I've also watched it.
Yeah,
I'm sure if Titanic happened in 2012 instead of 1912, there would be little handheld, like old phone cameras with like those sounds, you know, people like the boing of the propeller man, like, you know, that would be like a thing, potentially. So it's kind of like people, I think about Titanic, and it's not tangible. There will never be footage of it. There will never be like an answer to the unanswerable. So something like 9/11, something like Costa Concordia kind of like fills a void that Titanic will never fill, in a way.
I think there's
I
was gonna say, I think there's just like a really strange fascination with the idea of mortality, because obviously anyone who's gone through it cannot answer our questions about it. And I think it's also that paired with extenuating circumstances like 9/11, like that was just never a thing that's happened in that extreme case, and sort of what are they thinking of during this time? That sort of curiosity.
I
feel
like putting yourself there,
basically.
With 9/11, I feel like people of our generation, it feels so real, whereas Titanic feels like a story. And I feel like it's very similar with the there was a World War I documentary, They Shall Never Grow Old, I think it was called.
They Shall Not Grow Old, yeah.
Peter Jackson,
yeah. And like, you know, I'm sure we've all seen footage from World War I and World War II, and you're like, it doesn't feel real to us because it's in this old sort of camera, everyone's moving all silly. And then as soon as they slowed down that footage, put it in 60 frames per second, added color, added sound, you were something like, oh shit, they were real people. This did actually happen.
Yeah.
I love the way they did it, because I was just watching the beginning of that thing.
It starts off really small.
It's like, oh, it's just another documentary. I'm a bit, and then it just fades out and goes into like, and suddenly it becomes real too, like you said.
But I feel like with Titanic, there is nothing like that makes people go, wow, that's actually happened.
No, so, we only have pictures of before and after. There is no during in it at all.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Even the photos of people that were there, like, because it took such a long time for the photo to be taken, people had to sit very still, not make a lot of facial expressions. So the photos, and you know, they're black and white, so they feel very like impersonal. They feel very like cold. So as much as you can look at, you know, the photo of the Goodwin family, where there was like 12 of them or 8 of them or whatever it was, and it's like, that's a photo of like, you know, parents and all these children, but they all look so like almost like scary. It's all quite harsh.
I always just sat there like,
Whereas, you know, like a 9/11 documentary, I remember watching one where they had like home footage of the woman dancing around like her birthday cake, and it was like her 40th birthday, whatever, and she was beautiful and so full of life. And then it's like a week later, this happens to her and she didn't survive. And it's so harrowing. But the other day I saw, and it was before 1912. And it was 4 photos of a mother and daughter, and they're all black and white. But there's one where the daughter's pulling her mum's mouth like open, and the mum's making a funny face, and the daughter's like hysterically laughing. And then there's one where they're both sitting very posed and like still. And then there's another one where they're both making funny faces. And I was like, it's not often you see photos like that. Like, to the point I was mesmerized by these. I was looking at them for like 5 minutes. I was like, they're so beautiful. I love them.
It's because they were so uncommon that if you were to take a photo,
that's the ones. Look how. Oh yeah, the nose one.
There it is.
The nose. How cute is that?
So uncommon that when you had the opportunity to have a photo taken, you wanted like to look smart and something you could show people and show, oh, look how smart and elegant we are. Whereas now you can take a photo, you don't like it, you delete it, you take some stupid photos. It's just so easy.
So as much as we can see all these people that were on Titanic from all classes that died, it feels like, I think there's like a detachment there because they don't feel human in a way, because it feels so long ago. It just doesn't, you know, they don't seem as human as maybe a modern day photo would seem. And then as well, you know, the story itself has become almost like fable, like the tortoise and the hare. It almost is like detached from reality at this point. It's like, you know, it's used as a comparison. It's used as a measure of like good and bad. It's not like a disaster anymore. It's just it is a tale, you know.
Yeah.
I think it shows when it becomes like an act or something. Like I even found out they did a Danish version of the Titanic musical a few years back, and it's just the way the actors describe their roles. I'm like, it's become a fable because it's not just Mr. Ismay, the chairman of the White Star Line. He's a character all of a sudden. It
He's
feels
the
weird.
evil Mr. Ismay.
Yeah, it's something like that.
The villain.
Yeah, super interesting though. So, we got onto the whole 9/11 thing, so we're talking about cameras, but that was kind of just something that popped into my head there, in terms of unanswered questions. So, yeah.
Well, so on that topic, you know what's really interesting? We kind of briefly talked about this in our group chat, but in America, we learn 9/11 in schools, but we do not talk about Titanic. Like, that's just, sometimes they mention the Lusitania, but like you guys were saying that you guys do learn Titanic in schools over there.
I never learned it in school. It was never part of my curriculum. Yeah.
I asked as well.
Did you learn Titanic, Sebastian, in school?
I think it was briefly mentioned from time to time, but it wasn't like a topic as far as I recall.
Oh, ours was a full...
Because ours is mostly like general Danish history, the occupation of Germany and all that. Not much Titanic there. I think it's a shame because I know I've mentioned it before, but we had like a few people who went down there and died. So it's a small piece of the Titanic history, but it's there.
I don't know why in Scotland it's part of the curriculum and it still is, but I didn't learn it until second year of high school. So I was like 12. And yeah, it was like a proper, you know, I'm still scarred by this. So I was obsessed with Titanic. Obviously, I had been for like years at this point, and people kind of knew because like I would like sit and draw it in my jotter. Like I wouldn't be listening in maths and I would just be drawing the Titanic from memory, and people would be like kind of like in awe, but then also bullying me for it because it's a bit weird, and it is a bit weird. But then when it got to this point in history class, we had to write a newspaper as if it was like the morning after, and we've just found out that the Titanic sank, or we don't know if it sank yet. So like one of the two. And basically in my head, I was like, right, I don't want to out myself as this person that knows way more than we've actually been taught, because like Mrs. McCann was teaching us about it. And in my head, I'm like, she didn't mention that, but that's cool. Okay, I know this, but so my newspaper article, it was fine. It was okay, but I definitely held back a lot. And I knew I was doing that. But then people given like amazing ones, like so like super long, like super detailed. They put in stuff that she didn't teach, and I felt so. And she still said it was good. She was like, "Oh, Arron, yeah, yours is great." But then there were like 3 people that like went way out on it and got like super praised. And it was like one of those points in my life where I was like, it doesn't matter what it's for, whether it's Titanic or like it doesn't anything. I'm never going to hold myself back because of what other people might think. Like, I don't care if they're going to bully me for it. I don't care if, you know, and at 12, that's quite a deep lesson to learn. But yeah, that's always stuck with me. But the primary school I work in now, so it's ages like 4 to 10, they teach it as part of the P6 curriculum. So these kids are like 9 and they're getting taught Titanic. So actually it's being taught much earlier. And then I think they teach it again in high school more in depth. But I don't know why it's a Scottish thing. I'm really surprised that, you know, David and Louie weren't taught it in school. That's really strange.
Yeah.
I think we might have
the tugboat.
I feel like we might have touched on it with like maybe 1 or 2 lessons in year 6. So I was between 10 and 11. Because I vaguely remember them showing a clip of the film with when they're loading the lifeboats and they're like throwing baggage over the side. And like I think it's Lightoller who's shouting, "What's this luggage doing here?" and like chucks it over and stuff. I vaguely remember seeing that in school, but it definitely wasn't a core part of the curriculum. It wasn't something that we spent a long amount of time on. I think it was 1, maybe 2 lessons. But yes, it definitely wasn't like a major part of the curriculum.
Interesting. I'm actually going to because obviously I don't know about the English kind of curriculum, but the Scottish, it's a curriculum for excellence. So you've got your kind of your learning intention, and then you've got basically how you're going to achieve that. So, learning Titanic, you could say the intention is I can hear about a historical event and that I can then recount that event. Or I can summarize that event. So, you learn about it for a week, and then at the end of the week, you stand up and give like a little 5-minute presentation to show that I've listened, I can retain the knowledge, and I can, regurgitate the knowledge, basically. So it's not so much about Titanic, it's kind of just, we'll pick this really solid event that it happened over the course of like a night. It's not World War One, it's not, the Romans, it's not like the Highland clearances. It's this one very like small event. And
it's very self-contained, you mean?
Yes, very self-contained, which I think that's why they use it. Not because it's the Titanic. I think it so happens to be the Titanic.
It's I've got a friend who's a history teacher in Liverpool, and he works for a private school, and in this school it's either a private school or an academy, I'm not sure which, and they sort of pick and choose what they want to go in that year. And I remember asking him, I was like, have you ever taught Titanic? And he said, we taught it last year, and it's in the curriculum. It's like a pick and choose it, but they haven't chosen it for a while now. But they have so they sort of had that sort of opportunity. And he went, one year we did choose the Titanic, and then after that we didn't go back to it. So I know for some places it is an option for the school to decide to include, which was in his case.
I think, see, if I was a head teacher, I wouldn't, even though I'm a Titanic fanatic, I wouldn't make it, if I had like my own school, like a private school, and I could decide, I think I'd make it compulsory for the younger years. But then actually when it gets to like the older ones, I'd have like the plague, World War One, even like a full decade, like the 1960s, where like a lot happened, as opposed to like the Titanic. I think I can understand not being compulsory, because like David said more eloquently than me, it is very self-contained. So unless you're going to then get the kids to do a dissertation on like safety regulations at sea, in the 1930s, and how they were impacted by the Titanic in 1912, like, which that would be super cool. But it's also not like super, but yeah, good question, Prez. I like that. That was quite eye-opening. I didn't realize it was so niche, actually. Yeah. But it is pretty niche.
Yeah.
It'd be cool though if they start teaching it more. Like we in the school I work in, we had a guy from NASA. I think he's retired now, but he was speaking to, and to be fair, the kids were a bit young. It was a bit much for them, but it was just a Q&A. So it was so funny. So he kind of introduced himself. It was on Zoom, and he was using very kind of like basic language. So the kids got that he worked with like NASA, and they knew what that was because they were learning about space. And then, did his little 5-minute intro, and he was like, any questions? And there's this boy that had his hand up like pretty early on. And so the teacher was like, yeah, what's your question? And he asked the screen, he said to the man from NASA, can I go to the toilet? and he was
Brilliant.
Like, yes, you can. But then the questions were great. So, like a kid, this 7-year-old kid was like, what happens if you die in space? And he was like,
Ooh.
And he answered it very, for a 7-year-old, he gave like a good answer. They were like, where do you poo in space? Where does the poo go? I was like, these are like good questions. So can you imagine like Bill Willard or Steve Hall or Presley or like David, like, like going like on a screen in a school talking about the Titanic to kids that are like, they're 7 or they're 10, or it's like a high school, they're like 12, like, and like giving a more kind of nuanced kind of, not going too much into it, but kind of like talking about how impactful Titanic was and how useful it is to learn about these things, and kind of like humanizing it a little bit. Bill Willard, Louie and I spoke to him, he'd be a great one. He's got such a like storyteller voice, and he's got like this like southern drawl kind of. He'd be excellent.
That was really cool. I am gonna have to hop off early because my eye is going crazy, and I don't know why, and it's really itchy and it's starting to puff up. So I'm going to head off this podcast early.
You've not been like stung or anything, have you?
No, I haven't. It's been happening a lot recently. I don't know why. Oh, I don't want to gross you out, but you can see it's sort of like red at the bottom here, and I don't know why. It's like, I don't know if it's something to do with my dog or what, but like it's puffing up as well. It's getting swollen at the bottom.
You
So,
might have like a dog hair like in your eye. That'd be awful.
Possibly.
Go and try and get some water and like actually drip water in your eye. That should hopefully like clear it out. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Arron.
Sucks to be you.
I know.
I know. I was thinking.
I don't like the way you just called it.
But well, yeah, Louie, that's not a problem. And if you want to hop back on it, if we're still here, like do. And if not, I might see you next weekend at the one that Jordan's free for. So
cool. All right.
Yeah.
I'll catch you guys later.
Peace
Bye.
out.
Bye, Louie.
How random.
What an unanswered question. Ooh.
Yeah.
What's in his eye?
What's in his eye? That's funny. It's not funny.
Went from unanswered Titanic questions to in general.
General ponderings of life. So any other kind of questions that last time we recorded, my question was, I had like all these other kind of questions I wanted to ask, but then the question I ended up asking, which was kind of like the first kind of big chunk of the video, was something that I'd read like the day before, and it was about the kind of the positioning of the wreck of the bow in correlation to where it actually sank. So yeah, in terms of like any questions we have, it doesn't need to be something that like you've thought about for like a long time. It doesn't need to be something that is, it could literally be anything.
Could you give like just a briefest summary of what's already been talked about in the last one?
So, and if you bring something up that's already been spoke about, it's fine because we're all going to have different opinions about it. But basically the main ones I kind of used as like the Instagram posts. So we spoke about the central propeller, and I was basically saying, why haven't they done like sonar or something to actually find out how many blades are on it? Even if it's, I was like, if I was a billionaire, I would go to like Elon Musk and be like, can I have some money? Because there's like 6 people on this Facebook group that keep shouting at me and telling me that I'm wrong, and I want to prove that I'm right. Like, and they
that would incentivize him to give you money, to be honest, more than any other thing you could say.
I just need to become a billionaire. But the whole thing is, you don't use your own money when you're doing like little passion projects. Although I also said I'd build like 6 replica Titanics. I'd keep one to like live on and like have my friends on, and then the other 5 I would sink, just to like see how they all sank and see if there was like any variation and see which one I liked the best. Let's like, I would like nothing spared, like no expenses spared. They'd all be like exact replicas, and then I would like harpoon inside of it and just watch it sink. And Louie was like, that I like that. That's a good use of your billions.
That could possibly answer a lot of unanswered questions.
See, but then could you imagine if like the second one it like rolled on its side and you're like, oops, don't know how that happened. that
one Poseidon's just goes upside down.
Yeah, one just wants to be the Costa Concordia, and it's like, we'll just score that one off. That didn't happen. So yeah, the central propeller was one. We kind of said it's not like the stern doesn't kind of command the same respect from people that the bow does, because the bow looks like a ship. It's so recognizable. There was that beautiful shot in the Cameron film at the end of the flying scene when it fades into the wreck, because it is so perfectly preserved in a way. It was almost just like they added rusticles and made it all a bit green, and that was it. Like, whereas the stern just looks like, I think Louie said, like scrap metal. So there's not much reverence around that, and there's not much interest. And if they thought they could make money from like magazine covers, like we finally found out how many blades are on the central propeller, people wouldn't care. Whereas if there was a magazine cover that said, we now know how long the iceberg hole was, or like the damage, we now know exactly what that, people would be like, oh, that's interesting. I'd buy that magazine to read. National Geographic or whatever. So that was the kind of question I had, and Louie was basically like, it's not cool enough, and I was like, you're right. The bow,
I think it's cool.
I
like the stern.
I think it's too, because you have those like towers.
Like, and there's all the debris on the side as well.
It's way more interesting.
It's way more interesting. Like, honestly, hashtag justice for the stern.
Yeah, I was about to say something similar, like hashtag the stern matters or something.
Justice for the stern. It's a shame. Like,
Lewis and Clark.
It's gonna be a T-shirt.
yeah, like actually, Bill Willard was saying to us that I can't remember if it was like during the recording or when he was speaking to us afterwards, but I think it was during the recording. I'm pretty sure it was. He said that like years ago, not long after the wreck was discovered, the idea from some like evil billionaires was to literally like cut these long slits in the bow, put in machines and scrape the inside of it out and into like nets and bring it up to the top and basically just like so that cabins where the doors are locked, because stewards were ordered to go and lock all the doors to prevent theft and looting. So all these doors are locked, so anything in the rooms pretty much stayed in the rooms. And actually, interestingly, a lot of shoes were found in a corridor, and people were like, "Oh, that's because all these people died." But actually, Bill was like, "It's more likely because first and possibly second class passengers would leave their shoes outside to be polished. So, like at night time, there was a man that went round, and if their shoes had been left outside, he'd polish the shoes. So that's most likely the reason why there's like all these shoes like heaped in this corner, as opposed to some people just decide, yeah, we're going to die in this hallway because that's we're one floor away from the boat deck, but we could just chill here. It's like that probably didn't happen. So like things like that. It's just, but yeah, these people wanted to like, yeah, destroy the bow, scrape the insides out, and see what treasures there were.
Horrible. That's horrible.
It's horrifying. You can't do that.
Really sounds like the plot in some kind of movie where like the like an evil billionaire just going like, aha, Captain 334.
It's the writers trying to come up with what's the most evil billionaire thing we could possibly think of.
It's like coming across a whale that's washed up on a beach, and instead of pushing it back into the water, you like, take its blubber to make candles or whatever. Like whatever you do with blubber, like it's evil. Like, and some people would be like, oh, it's just a ship, and it's like, well, it's not just a ship, and like you don't know what you're going to find in those rooms, and just leave it. Don't destroy. It's kind of I don't know if you're aware of like urban exploration, so like abandoned buildings and stuff. I went to the Countess of Rothes' old like mansion, and basically in Scotland there are no such thing as trespassing laws. So as long as you're not breaking it and entering, you can actually go on, like, you can go anywhere. And it's just to encourage like exploration and, traveling and adventure. But when it comes to like abandoned mansions or like old creepy castles and stuff, like you can go in, but it's a faux pas. It's discouraged to like break anything to get in. Like if you can't get in without breaking a window or, ripping off a door, you're not going in. And I kind of feel the same with Titanic. If you can't reach anything without cutting the ship and dragging it out, then don't go in. Like that, it's not yours.
I think it's also like really transparent what they're trying to do here, because the wreck is deteriorating by itself. So I think eventually we will see what's inside. So obviously, like, the intention isn't to find out what's inside, it's to be the one who find out what's inside.
That, oh my god, oh, I like that. But I hate it, but I like it. It's so true. It's like they don't actually care what they find. They just find like a watch, and it's not even a very expensive watch, but they're like, I was the one that found that watch. And it's like, well, yeah, because you destroyed the bow to get it. Like,
yeah.
And if you do that, the bow's just going to collapse even sooner. But so the reason I mentioned that was because he said, because the stern is so destroyed, that's kind of not, the bow's protected by, I forget the name of the company that, I think it is just RMS Titanic Incorporated. They own and protect the bow, but the stern's actually kind of just up for grabs. So if we did just come into like billions of pounds and create like a submersible, we'd be within the law to go down to the stern and take whatever we want from it, because it's so open. You don't have to break anything to get into it. But then actually, because of that, there's probably nothing in it, really. The walls and the doors wouldn't have held up on the way down. So anything that was in those rooms would have been completely, and to be fair, there was so much third class accommodation in the stern that there probably wouldn't have been much of value there anyway. So the stern is actually, not only is it the least kind of revered part, but it's not even protected. There's no protections for the stern, which is really sad, I think. It's pretty sad. So yeah, hashtag justice for the stern.
Absolutely.
We should start a GoFundMe and just do it all on our own.
Honestly, Presley, yes. Absolutely. And the dangerous thing is people would actually give money for that. They'd be like, yeah,
the time to talk Titanic exploration.
Shut up and take my money. Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
Wouldn't it just just imagine like this shot of a submarine like being lowered into the water and it has like the logo for our podcast on it. I don't think you could get better branding than that.
Oh my
it's
gosh.
just
Aaron, please make some like art of that.
I'm going to know. Honestly, that
Each
is
window of the submersible is like our face.
like I'll upload it with no context, so it'll be like a submersible with our logo and then just hashtag justice for the stern. No one will get
it. Yeah.
But yeah, I love that.
It is interesting you mentioned that. I just looked through the pictures and videos I took at the exhibition when it was in London, and there was a lovely massive model of the Titanic and then one of the wreck, but it's just the bow. They didn't bother making a model of the stern.
Yeah, they looked at it and went, that's too much work. That's too hard. Yeah. To be fair, if I was making the bow, I would say the bow's too much work. And then if I was making the stern, I would literally just throw some like scrap cardboard and like paper mache.
You could just throw anything at it and people were like, yeah, done.
It does look like wet cardboard, really, if you look at pictures of it.
Do you know what it is? They kind of, so if you get like a bit of a box and peel off the first layer of cardboard,
the little ripples in between the
corrugated, and there's a bit of metal that's like come right off the top. I think actually the poop deck, and it's like curved back, and it does look kind of corrugated like that, like metal. It's interesting. So now I want to make a model, like a little paper mache model of the wreck. That'd be cool. Just of the stern though, not the bow. Fuck the bow. Just the stern.
Gosh, had its time in the limelight, you know.
Yeah, it's had its moment. So it had the flying scene. Jesus, like what else does it need? Yeah, I love that. So, Sebastian, do you have any unanswered questions regarding Le Titanic?
It's a tough one because I think we've already touched on a lot of those regarding mortality and stuff. Because like we mentioned, like the reason why people are into things like 9/11 and stuff, it is the sort of thought of putting yourself there. I mean, I don't know how many times I haven't watched one of those reenactment things where people go in a flight sim and they recreate the planes going into the towers, and I just put myself in that horror of sitting on a plane, not knowing what the plan is with that plane, what the hijackers are doing, and then going into New York City and obviously hitting the tower and sort of transpiring that into Titanic of hitting the iceberg, not knowing what's going on. Suddenly the ship is sinking and the water is ice cold, and then dying in that ice cold water and all that.
So for you, it's much more the kind of the human aspect. Like
I think it's the human aspect because I started with being interested in the sort of events, the technical details of the events, but it's the human aspect that really gets me of that catastrophe, if you can call it that.
Yeah. That kind of came up last week as well. I think, and I mean, Louie agreed, but I was saying like, you know, we can hypothesize and wonder about like so many minute details. You know, how severe was the list? You know, what was the angle of the stern when it broke? But then you've got like over 1,500 people. In fact, all the people, whether they died or survived, you know, what were they doing at like this exact moment? And, you know, and we actually spoke about the Grand Staircase, because in the Cameron movie, it's full of people. And we were saying actually at that time, I doubt very much there would have been people just sitting like chilling. Yeah, like when you're at the beach and you're walking into the water and it's cold, your impulse is to like get out of the water. So I can't imagine people sitting and watching the tide essentially coming up to them. Your instinct would probably be to like get away from that. So yeah, no, I totally agree. Totally agree with that.
Unless you're Benjamin Guggenheim.
Yeah, apparently he just was like sitting there with his manservant.
No, thank you. We're dressed in our best and I'm prepared to go down as gentlemen.
But we would like a brandy.
That was a good impression.
That was a good impression.
That's like the best that scene.
That could have been your
we would like a brandy.
Yes. Oh, Sebastian.
We're prepared to go down, but we won't go down not being tipsy.
You're now recast as him. We'll get your tuxedo and the little white silk scarf he wears. He looks great, and his handsome like Spanish like manservant.
Yeah.
Love that
I
for
went
Benjamin
from like
Guggenheim.
Blondine or whatever his name is to
Oh.
Benjamin Guggenheim.
Yeah,
There seemed like a weird implication there because his valet wasn't very expressive or emotive at any point in his scenes.
At any point, he was willing to go down with that ship. He was like, yeah, you know, ride or die, and he chose die. Yeah, absolutely. I wish we could all have a manservant as devoted as that man was. You know, he was super devoted. God, I love that film. It's just great. It's very camp. It is. I think that's what I loved about that show. That man basically he didn't do anything that, I mean, it was kind of over the top. But I think why it was so funny was because he was basically just acting out all the bits of the film as they happened. He wasn't adding any lines. And it was funny because it is so camp. It is quite a camp film. It's so 90s. It's so like, they are caricatures, but that's what makes it so like loved, because it's so accessible. You know, you don't need to think about it too much. You just need to watch it and enjoy it. It's great. Oh, Guggenheim. God love you.
And
I
his
don't even like brandy. I've had it once and I was like, not a fan. It's like whiskey. I don't like whiskey either.
I think I had it once, and yeah.
Next unanswered question: why would he like a brandy of all things in the world? Could have any drink going down that ship, and he just.
I'm sure Charles Joffin could tell you why you'd want a brandy or 10. You know, just keep them coming. That was honestly the funniest line from the last episode that me and Louie did, and it was like near the end. Because we just started talking about random. I don't even know if it was Titanic related. Probably not. It was like time to talk Teslas or something. And and Louie was like, "This has gone off the rails." And I was like, you know, Joffin held on to the rails better than us, and he was like pissed. He was like so drunk.
I love that quote when you shared it, because it's just like so typically Louie.
Oh, it was great. It's like, and if you get it, you get it. If you don't, then this podcast maybe isn't for you. I don't know, but yeah.
I was like, when I read it, I was like, damn, it's on point, but wow. No words.
I'd love to I forget his name now, it's really bad, but on Facebook, of the guy that was the actor for Joffin in the Cameron film is a DJ now, which is like cool. Works for like radio stations and stuff. But I'd love to like get him on, but I need to think about like what to ask him. And you know, he loves the fact that he played that role. He signs like pictures, like behind the scenes photos of stuff, and like, you know, sells them to people, and so he's not ashamed of doing that. But yeah, if he was going to be on, I'd need to think about like things we could ask him. Because
we could ask him so much.
Presley's like, don't worry, I've got all the questions sorted. Well,
she's making the checklist for next time.
I'll reach out. I'll message him. I mean, there's quite a few people. Like, I nearly said Kathy Bates' great granddaughter. No, Molly Brown's great granddaughter. I've got her on Facebook, and I'd really like to get her on as well. She, when we spoke to Simon Medhurst, she commented and was like, "Oh, I just listened. Like, that was really good." So, you know, she's aware of the podcast, so it wouldn't be like totally out of the blue to like reach out to her. But so there's a few people that I've kind of got them in my sight, so to say. But it's just kind of like waiting for the right time, and you know, thinking what do we ask them, like, so it doesn't come across as, I mean, and to be fair, it's always going to come across as a bit like starstruck in a way, because it kind of is. It's, you know, it's always going to have a bit of that. But yeah, so exciting things. And it's just, the list like goes on forever. There's like artists I'd love for us to speak to. You know, Jordan, who will be on next week, although he is like one of the co-hosts. You know, he's working with Titanic Animations, who's really well known within the community online. The renders that he's been making recently and like putting on Instagram, they're just so cool, so good. I love the contrast, because like they're quite dark, but the color that he's got, the lights, that kind of like yellowy orange glow, I just think he's got it like chef's kiss. It looks perfect. I
also did some very good videos on like certain aspects of the sinking. Like one of those I loved when, in terms of the binoculars, I wouldn't know if you could call it binoculars theory or whatever, but the idea that binoculars would have enhanced their capabilities for like watching or seeing the iceberg, picking it up. And he just put like through different kind of scenarios with roughly the same lighting, roughly the same conditions than that night, and then asking, did you see the iceberg in this shot? And then here's the shot with binoculars, and you don't know, and it's like really well made in terms of, wow, it was actually kind of hard to spot it in the first place.
Yeah, it's so true. Like the fact that we can kind of more or less, with computer animation, we can create what they would have seen. And I think the argument is basically, you were already just looking at a black mass. So with binoculars, it just would have been even more black mass. If you're looking at a black wall, it's like, oh, look, a black wall. So then you look through binoculars at it and you're like, more black wall.
It looks even bigger now.
Yeah, it's like there's not much more. And I can understand why people, ask that. But even taking away the whole cold water mirage theory, the binoculars, they wouldn't have helped. That's kind of like an unanswerable question. Like, what would have helped, if anything? I've seen people, because obviously I don't think they show it in the Cameron film. They show it in older ones. And I thought it was a bit of creative license that they had up like a Morse lamp, so a massive like spotlight almost, where they could do Morse with turning it off and on. And I think, was it maybe A Night to Remember, or
it's a German one that displays a spotlight where the officer goes, turn on the spotlight, and then you have this light going down on the water and they see the iceberg. I don't know if that's the thing you're referring to.
No. So it's not a spotlight, but
it's on the both extreme ends of the bridge, isn't it?
Yeah. So they can actually use it to Morse code, but using light. So obviously a very quick turn on, turn off of the light would be like a dash.
The signal light, yeah.
Yeah. So it literally Morse codes light, and they had that. They used that night, but they don't show it in a lot of films. But I saw it in one old black and white film, and I just thought it was like basically.
I think it might have been, and I remember.
It might have been.
Could have been.
It was a super old one, and I just didn't think anything of it. But then it turns out they actually did use those. And in my head, I was like, could they have had them on to like shine out in front? But then, they probably weren't that strong. But then they were clearly strong enough that they hoped ships far away would see this. So it's just a shame that if they had these lights that were fairly powerful, quite bright, could they not also just have one built onto the front of the ship that could shine out in front? But then would that light pollution then hinder the vision of the people in the crow's nest, the people on the bridge? Because it would have to be pretty bright. So
I think that would affect your night vision a bit, just theorizing there.
Yeah, a bit of a catch-22.
Because it wasn't in the video I mentioned with Titanic animation, that was one of the things he showed too, because together with the binoculars, it's like a twin theory, I guess, because it's either binoculars or it's a spotlight, so he sort of displayed both.
Yeah. Another thing that we mentioned last week was kind of about like the breakup. That, I think, the older I get, the more I realize that's kind of the part of the Titanic sinking that really fascinates me the most, because it was so hotly debated. So it does make me wonder how above the surface or below the surface was the breakup. And if the angle of the sinking was quite low, it kind of stands to reason that it wouldn't have been that visible that the ship had. And, people did say that it righted itself, so that was visible. So it, obviously did something, it shifted enough to be noticed. But yeah, I do often wonder, where exactly did it take place? How prominent was it? Was it very audible? They could obviously hear things falling through the ship.
Wasn't it described like people thought it was like a boiler explosion or something like that?
Yeah.
I think something similar.
If it was a lot lower, I think that could explain why there was so much confusion, because people probably couldn't really tell.
Yes, exactly.
I think that's like one of the very few good elements of the 2012 miniseries is how dark the breakup was. It probably was even dark in real life as well, but they managed to get that. It was basically pitch black. It was just like a mat moving. You have no idea what's really going on.
Yeah, that was a really good decision in that series because it's dark and it is a very low angle. To Louie's dismay, it's so low that the first funnel isn't even in the water yet. But glossing over that, it's yeah, it's like the ship has barely even like started to sink and it's already broken half. But yeah, that bit is very, very good. And the fact that they had the camera kind of going up and down from the water, which adds to the confusion of it all, was really well done. Actually, that was a really good decision.
You kind of see it like from what you expect a passenger to see, because I think it's like a fireman whose brother was a waiter on the ship, and he's lost sight of him, and you can feel his confusion because he's down up and down the water, finds like a collapsible bee, I think it is, he's crawling up on, and it's just really well done.
I think it's really hard to visualize how to make a Titanic epic now, because A Night to Remember is the quintessential old one and Titanic is the quintessential new one. So when you're trying to tell that story, it's sort of the idea of how to do things differently, but also in a way that benefits the narrative. So we had like the huge momentous explosion crashing with everyone on deck. So I think it made sense now to show that from the perspective of being in the water.
Yeah, because in the Cameron one, it's very choreographed, and not quite robotic, but it is very. It's like we've got this side on shot, and then we're going to cut to above the deck house, and then we're going to cut to here, and it's whereas. Yeah, I really appreciate the kind of the fluid, natural kind of. It almost comes across as like a one-shot take, in the 2012 one. So I think that was a really good decision, because A Night to Remember, almost when you're watching it, you're like, this could almost be like a play, like quite a good play if you kind of like worked it in a way.
Yeah.
Whereas and then Titanic's like this like sweeping epic of a film. It's like up there with like Ben-Hur and all that kind of stuff. It would be really hard actually nowadays to make another Titanic film and think, how are we going to approach it? Because you don't want it to come across as like stiff, and if you're going to do it properly and actually people are going to behave the way that they would have behaved in 1912, because a lot of the mannerisms and the stuff that they say in the Cameron one, it is quite 90s, which is totally fine. It adds to the value of it, but you've got to kind of think, how much creative liberty do we take, and then when it comes to the sinking, how are we going to depict that and show it where it's still dramatic and it's still kind of like action packed, but it's not forced. It doesn't come across as like another 90s like blockbuster disaster movie. Probably why people don't touch it nowadays, because they're just like, how do you do it?
Even aspects as like the iceberg hitting the iceberg scene is like something that's been depicted differently, and people have different opinions about what doing it right. Because I remember like a review of A Night to Remember where someone preferred the Night to Remember iceberg scene to Cameron's, because Cameron's is like dun 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 dun, a lot of things going on.
It takes like 3 times as long.
It's like then you have the bridge, then cut to the engine room, and I like that because the composition, the cutting, it transitions like the panic of the moment, but I also like the Night to Remember because it's just so slow and it's tense and everything, but hard to replicate, I guess.
What were you going to say there, Presley?
Oh, I don't remember, but if we want to change topics, I have 2 weird questions.
Yes.
Sure, let's go.
I just thought of this one while we were talking about the stern and the breakup. So where it broke up is right where the aft staircase was, right? Like that's probably gone. But like, I was just thinking, people always ask, what happened to the grand staircase? Well, yeah, it deteriorated. If we could explore the stern, like, is there possibilities that like that could give an answer to what happened to the forward one?
Yes and no, because I think because so much damage happened to the stern. So the bow, this was something I learned fairly recently, and it's just one of those little things that you're like, oh, that's cool. So when the ship broke, the weight of the bow section full of water was the same weight as the entire ship before it hit the iceberg. So just the bow, so just this like 2/3 of the ship was now the weight of the entire ship before it broke, because it was so full of water. But then obviously that means that there's no implosions going on, and so the rooms and stuff are still very distinctively rooms, and the corridors look like corridors, although they look like caves because there's all these like rustical things hanging down. But so yeah, I do see what you're saying, but then like it's interesting though, because as much as like actually the bow didn't have all these implosions and stuff, it's like, where the hell did the staircase go? And we found the dome, the wrought iron cover, but we only have found the one for the aft grand staircase, which was like a smaller circle one, whereas the forward dome was a large oval shape. So it's like, where did that go?
Yeah.
Why did that go? And how have we found, like, we found cherubs from the aft grand staircase, we found the dome cover from the aft grand staircase, a lot of wood paneling. It's almost like the Titanic sailed from Southampton without a forward grand staircase, and people just forgot to mention that. Like, mind your step, there's a huge gap. Like, there's no
We didn't finish it. We didn't finish it.
There's like a big bucket, and you just like lower people down to D-deck in it. Yeah, it's weird.
I know. I just randomly thought of that while we were talking.
The grand staircase conspiracy.
Oh, yeah, what I started. Yeah, honestly.
That's our call to fame now.
Yeah,
there was no grand staircase.
People say that.
I feel like we're moving into Chernobyl, where it's like you didn't see graphite.
Honestly, you didn't see graphite.
Didn't see a grand staircase. I did. You didn't, because it's not there.
You didn't see graphite, but yeah, but like, even in the grand staircase, they're saying that there wasn't a clock. They didn't have time to make the clock, so there was actually a mirror there instead of the clock. So it's like, even that is like up for debate. I know Presley Space, they're like, what the fuck? Like,
that is something I heard. Yeah, was there?
You're telling me there wasn't an honor glory? Yeah.
But and it's like, it's like, and one day it might come out. You know, there might be a diary entry from someone who survived, and they mentioned meeting someone at the clock at the forward grand staircase, and then it'll be like, okay, because we know that there weren't any clocks on the lower ones. There would have only been one there, but apparently there's like paperwork to say that a mirror was installed in the grand staircase, and the only place people can think it would be where the clock would have been. But then, like, how random to have like a wee mirror like that size? Like, why? Like, it's so strange. But then what else you're going to put there? Like a small painting? Be very strange. So, and the whole, that panel was literally Honor and Glory crowning time, not Honor and Glory crowning your reflection. As much as that'd be kind of cool, like you're watching them like put this little like crown on you, as we all deserve a crown. But yeah, so why have we got bits of the aft grand staircase but no bits of the forward grand staircase? What the hell happened to it? If the bow was so full of water that there shouldn't have been any implosion happening.
Yeah.
And you know, there's like wooden hallways and stuff that are still kind of intact to this day. Like, it's mostly the metal kind of beams and stuff. But I mean, there are still bits of wood. Amazingly, there are tiny fragments of wood. So if that's still there, why is the grand staircase just gone? Like, where the hell did it go? That's such a random part of the. And it's convenient because it means we can send like ROVs down there. But yeah, so strange, very strange. I'd love to find even just like the wrought iron bit for the dome, the forward dome. That would be like so cool. It's somewhere. But where?
All right. Are you ready for my second question?
Go.
Yes.
So I tried to find this answer on my own, and I just couldn't really, like, I don't know. Let's see what you guys think. So, had someone died before any of the tragedy happened, what were the protocols that they do on board? And I tried to find this answer, like, with, like, what they do on modern day cruise ships. I think they usually just have someone, like, they keep the body on ice and, like, dock the family and make arrangements that way. But I'm like, what would they have done in 1912?
That is a good question, especially because voyages took longer. Well, modern day cruise ships, because a lot of the clientele on cruises are older people, and actually a lot of older people will use their retirement to basically just cruise until they die. Love that for them. Then there are basically like mini morgues on cruise ships.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
So,
the
yeah.
Titanic, I know they had like a medical ward, which the fourth funnel was used to kind of ventilate the medical ward. But
That's probably the one I'm thinking on, because something in me I was like, didn't they have something similar? But no, I'm not sure.
But then, yeah, it's like, so you've got a medical ward. What happens if, like, worst case scenario? Yeah, like Presley said, someone like dies.
Can't help but have this like morbid thought that maybe they'd clear some of the things from the freezers that stored food and just put them there.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a crazy thought or not.
I wish like some White Star Line handbook existed out there where it was like, here's what
Oh,
you do. That they give people, and they're like, here's your protocols.
The corpse chapter.
The corpse chapter.
I feel like if anyone that I could reach out to would know that, it would be Tad Fitch, who co-authored On a Sea of Glass, because he knows like a lot. And if not, he could point me in the direction of someone that might know. Because that's such a good question. Like modern days, it's a given. Like people die, but yeah, like back then, like, or you know, the water's cold. Do they just like put them in a wee dinghy and like just keep them in the water, like trailing behind the ship for like the last 3 days? Like, oh, it'll be fine. You know, we'll make sure the seagulls don't get too near them. But yeah, interesting question, Prez. I like it. You're thinking outside the box here. But that would be really funny.
Question.
Like in the galley, they're reaching in for the caviar and they've got to like push past the corpse, like, sorry, mister.
Like, just ignore that. We know you just work here, you're kitchen staff. It's fine.
Because there's things we do know. So, like, you know, the White Star Line had a policy of like lights out at 11 o'clock. So all the public areas, apart from staircases, would have been in, so like the first class dining saloon would have been in darkness. So all those like double portholes you see on the ship, that whole section would have been black. Although I did read or hear somewhere that when they started bringing up third class passengers, stewards were told to put them in there to wait their turn to go up. So actually,
was that in the general room, or
so like it was either the reception room, which would have also had the double windows, or it was the first class dining. It might have been the reception room. They were told to kind of sit and wait there. So you can just imagine these like third class people like clutching their possessions, like they've never seen this room before because they didn't come on the ship this way, and they're being told to wait there for 20 minutes, 40 minutes, they don't know, and they're sitting like in luxury, but it's a bit like ominous because like the dining saloon's in like complete darkness, and you can hear that there's people upstairs like going about like to the boat deck, but you're being told to sit there and wait. And then also like maybe like a floor down from you where like the Turkish baths are, there's water, you can hear water like waves, you know, below you like that. That'd be awful. So, you know, we know like certain things that they would do, but yeah, what do you do if there's a body? What do you do?
There's like that thing where like if you got in trouble, the Master of Arms like took you somewhere. And I know that it wasn't where James Cameron had Jack, but like I'm like, someone tell me the protocols.
I love that.
There's gotta be like a protocol somewhere.
it's the walk-in freezer?
Because I'm not coming from
I'm telling
ways.
you, I'm
You
telling
have
you
like
now.
books that are just, you know, these are the signals, these are the hand signals you use and stuff. What's the line? There's gotta be like something.
They're like,
This is the signal for walk-in freezer. So we're putting them.
See, once the collision happened, you know how there was like lots of ice on the forward well deck? Whoever worked at the morgue was probably like, "Oh, I could use this." And,
Oh
like,
yeah,
scooped it all up. Like, well, it's good fresh ice. No point letting it go to waste, you know. That's interesting. I'm going to find that out now. I would never have thought of that. Love that. Unanswered questions, and it's ones that we wouldn't have even have imagined. Yeah.
I did want to ask an unanswered question. I don't know if you talked about this already because it's quite like a popular one to talk about, but like, what was the fate of the lifeboats? after.
Oh, they
Yeah,
got destroyed, didn't they? Or they just
What was that?
left-
I'm
Right.
pretty sure, yeah, Presley said they got destroyed. It's not certain. So people have said, oh, they were given to Olympic. But actually, I've heard that they weren't given to Olympic as much as, because there was actually like a strike, they refused to get back on the ship until there were more lifeboats. And then they gave them canvas lifeboats that were like full of holes. So they then got back off the ship and were like, come on, give us like proper lifeboats. And they did. Apparently, they were Titanics, but they would have had to have gotten those boats from New York back to, which wouldn't have made sense. Surely they would have waited till Olympic was back in New York to do that. So yeah, I've heard that they were just oh my goodness, look at that little floppy baby. Oh,
Hello.
oh my gosh. Is it a Yorkie?
Yeah,
A little Yorkshire. Oh my goodness.
What's his name?
lion.
Oh,
Lion. It's cute because it's so small.
Oh, that's brilliant.
How old?
Like 3 months. So we have a Yorkie that's 3 years now, and she gave birth. We planned this whole thing. She gave birth to 2, so that's why I have 3 dogs.
That is so. Were you being sarcastic when you said we planned this whole thing, or was it like an accidental dog pregnancy? Because they do.
No,
happen.
we planned it. We planned it.
Okay. So if David was on Titanic, he'd have been, wearing his long overcoat with like 2 mysterious lumps. Three
And you would
mysterious
have
lumps.
gone down to free the dogs from the kennels.
Oh, 100%.
Oh, 100%. I love
Is that
people.
not what we all would have done? We're like, I got something to do.
Yeah, we've got dogs to be saving. Apparently, people said that was John Jacob Astor did that, which there's no evidence to say that he did, but I like to imagine that it was him that did
Yeah,
that.
it's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, it's a sort of
So,
like.
so back to like when Honor and Glory was like planning this open world Titanic game, and it's like, well, you choose your own fate on the ship. I'm gonna free the freaking dogs.
Yeah, you just free roam to do what you want. That would be awful if like you could like part of the game was, do you free the dogs or do you not free the dogs? Could you imagine not freeing the dogs? Like what monster would play that game and not free the dogs? Like
I think that's like kind of hard if you want to really make an open world Titanic game, because there's so many, well, unanswered questions, but also so many possibilities you have to consider in making the game. Like, what sort of options do we want the player to have? And if freeing the dogs is one of them.
yeah, how much power do we want to give them? It was like who I think was it Sebastian or someone sent a clip from a documentary of like James Cameron, Ken Marshall, and like quite a few other people talking about what they could have done to not prevent the sinking, but potentially save more people. So, buy more time, or, I think.
Yeah, that's from like the 20 years later thing. Yeah.
Yeah, James Cameron, his one was a bit outlandish. I was like, fair. And everyone at the table was like, okay, Jim. He was like, just back the ship up and put everyone on the iceberg. And it's like, it's pitch black. It's made of ice. Like, sir.
I mean, ice is not really like a good thing with friction. So you're going to just
no safety concerns on that one. Just plop them on the bird and that's it.
Yeah, it's like we need to cut all their hands and butts off because they get like major frostbite, but they survived, I guess. But then Ken Marshall was like, I would have taken every single life jacket and thrown it like down where the holes were to like not stop the flooding but severely slow it down. And I was like, would that have worked? Like every single life jacket?
I think they had like a guy on the team who was like working with simulators of that sort of thing, and they calculated they could have actually either stopped or reduced the sinking by having all the lifebelts, but like they agreed upon was like, how do you get like 2,000 people to agree to give you their lifebelts, and then not only that, but getting those 2,000 something lifebelts into that section
down
of the
there in time, because
while the water is pouring in with I don't know how many gallons per second or liters or whatever you'll measure in.
Because let's say everyone agreed and was like, okay, I'll trust you, random man. The ship had capacity for like over 4,000 people. So I mean that's a lot of lifebelts, and it's cork, so it would expand slightly. The canvas would absorb some of the water, so it's like you could potentially claw, even if you just put them all in one compartment. because they were one compartment away from being able to stay afloat. But not five.
Yeah, that was boiler
so-
room. Was it 5? Boiler room 5?
Or 6, or yeah.
Yeah, something
your
like
pick.
that. It was like a cold
Oh,
bunker
sick.
that was keeping the water away, as far as I remember.
Yeah. So like Thomas Andrews just like opens the door and is like, "Throw them in, boys," and everyone's like, to the point where they're like bursting out of the room. They're like,
I love
can't
that.
move. Yeah.
I think it's a great idea. We definitely should have tried this.
They should have. See, when I build my 5 replicas, the 6th one will not be touched. When I will build my 5 replicas, we can do that. We can get like.
I feel like
Facebook
that feels like
makes-
that feels like a joke that would be made. You know the movie Airplane, but if it was Titanic, just a sketch with Thomas Andrews opening the doors like, "Put them in, boys," and they just like fly run past with lifebelts. Put them in there.
And then everyone that doesn't have a life belt, they realize the ship's still going to sink, and they're like, "I can't swim."
That's like the deleted scene from that version of Titanic. It's just this ship can't sink. I assure you she can, unless.
Yeah, unless that would be so. I love Airplane. It's so funny. So what's the It's along the same vein. I think is it Spaceballs, and it's like the Star Wars parody.
Yeah.
Space. That's very funny. Very funny. They should make like a proper like big budget Titanic parody film.
We
isn't
need
like
that. Like there's been
Titanic
so many
horror film.
others.
Yeah.
Spaceballs
good.
is so iconic. I love the combing desert scene.
But,
Well, have you guys seen how ridiculous that like Titanic 2 one is? Where like
yeah.
that one girl gets like chopped in half by one of the doors.
Yeah,
Never got
Titanic.
that far, and
Titanic 2.
I only got as
Titanic
far as like the
666.
tsunami and iceberg or whatever it was. I don't,
Yeah.
it's like she can only go 48 knots. Push her to 50. Oh no, engine troubles. Who wrote the script?
It
It's
is
the
so
fact
funny.
they called it Titanic 2, and it's like I get it, but I remember at the time a few of my friends on Facebook thought it was like an actual sequel, and I was like, how can you make a sequel about a ship that sank? Like that makes no sense.
That's like this. I don't remember the name of the YouTube channel, but there's like legit someone who made trailers for Titanic 2 using clips from Romeo and Juliet.
I remember.
Jack is
And I
back.
think he even made one for a third movie where he edited this scene where it's like it's what's the name of the guy with the expedition in the movie? But anyways, it's just like, who is this? It's Jack Dawson. I told you wanted to take the call or something like that.
It's very, very well done.
I had written a short story in English one year, and it was about how Jack had actually survived, changed his name to Jay Gatsby, and like he's had the heart of the ocean in his jacket, and so that's how he became Gatsby with all that money. It was like a whole conspiracy theory.
And there's a whole thing in The Great Gatsby where he doesn't like water.
He doesn't like water, and he
and
does the
when he
whole
does-
raising the drink thing.
He is Jack.
Gatsby is Jack Dawson confirmed.
I love that. It's a multiverse. The
That's
Jack
all.
Dawson
We never knew.
multiverse.
We never knew.
That's
Speaking
excellent.
speaking of Titanic 2, are any of you aware that movie has a sequel?
What is there a
Titanic 2
Titanic
has a sequel?
3?
Yeah, by the same production company. It's called Titanic 666.
What?
That one, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it
I
on like
I just watched the trailer.
It's on the
It makes me
Titanic
stupid.
3. It just
Oh my
is
gosh,
on the
it's like a
Titanic 3.
horror movie?
Yeah.
I mean, you already hate that female character in the first scene where it's just like, oh my god, look at that ship.
Oh no. Yeah, it's horrible. It's just terrible. The plot is they're on the Titanic 3 because obviously no one can learn their mistakes. And then I think
obviously.
an ancestor of someone who was on the first Titanic starts doing some paranormal hullabaloo to summon the dead, and then obviously the ship ends up sinking anyway.
It's wild. Captain Smith died just so that we could have him in like a zombie form. That's
Yeah.
fundamentally. I hope he knew that. I hope he's happy. I hope you're happy.
I'm just thinking of that book I found. What was it, like Deck C or something? It's a set or whatever. That's like about a
Deck Z.
zombie apocalypse.
I have that book.
Oh yeah.
Oh my!
I haven't read it, but I
I'm
haven't.
so jealous.
Plot for it was just like, oh my god.
Lion, you would have survived. I would have made sure you survived. I'd have thrown
100%.
myself in the water if it meant that
You would have fought
Lion-
Lightoller. You just was like, fucking come and get me.
I'd be like, you can have every life belt to plug that hole except Lions. Lion needs a life belt. And like Lions drifting away on a life belt.
It's on top of it, shaking.
It's on top of it. It's so bad. I can't imagine like being on the Carpathia and like my husband has like died and my son has died. And then there's like millionaire first class people walking their dogs and like can you imagine how salty you'd be? Like
Yeah.
That would just be
so
sick.
like that'd be wild to be watching them like because it was what's their name? The Duff Gordons, wasn't it? Because their lifeboat got dubbed the Millionaire Lifeboat because they were on it, and
Yeah.
they apparently paid people to like let them on it, which I don't think they didn't do that.
I think wasn't the theory that they paid people to not let anyone else on it?
Jesus, that's even worse.
Yeah.
That's even worse.
I don't think that's been proven. I just want to say that.
Can you imagine like there was 4 people on it, including them, and they're like, right, we're full. Here's like
I think they were offering their money out of like kindness, and then everyone else
Yeah,
was
that
kind of
was-
insulted, and they were like, "What? Like we just lost our entire lives, and you guys are just throwing it away."
yeah.
I think it's just like one of those situations where you're saying like, you want to help, but you don't know how, and then they had money, so I guess that's sort of the mentality.
Yeah, it's like rich people being out of touch. Like during lockdown, when all these millionaires started singing "Imagine" by John Lennon and like posting it online, and it was just really tone deaf and cringy. So like,
It was awful.
you can imagine like the Gordons, the Duff Gordons, like throwing money at all these grieving widows in this boat, being like, "It will be okay. You can buy a new house," and it's like, okay, I guess, like picking up all this money in the dark and like wiping your tears with $100 bill. Like, thanks very much. Like,
I lost my only spouse, but at least it can buy a car.
it's like, your dog's really cute, by the way. I like your dog. Thanks, I've got 2.
Wasn't the conversation that they were like sitting on the lifeboat the lifeboat, and they had one of their maids with her, and they were like, "Oh, there goes that pretty dress we bought you," and people were like,
Yeah, honestly, it's so bad. In fact, I'm maybe making that up. Is there not a line that they use in the Cameron film? Is it Ruth that says it or someone? Maybe not. It's maybe not in the Cameron film, but they definitely use that in either a series or a film, and it does just show the detachment from reality that people had. But then it's like also in fairness, maybe at that point they didn't think that anyone had like died or
I was gonna
going
say
to.
that, yeah. I think it
Yeah.
might have been just a fair thing to say. It's like, but everyone got off, right? You're not thinking about death in that moment, I don't think.
Yeah. It's just wild, absolutely wild. Crazy. It's insane.
It took a while for people to like realize there was an accident or something happening in the first place.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a bit mentioned in the Cameron thing where it's like, they're inside, they don't want to be on deck because it's cold, but also the fact like how severe the whole thing was. I think it took some time to like manifest itself in their minds.
I mean, people are kind of like that unless someone's shouting at you to act or to do something, and even then, some people, unless they see danger, they're not going to do anything. So there's this YouTube channel. I think I've mentioned it before, and I'll mention it again because it's so good. The channel on YouTube is called Fascinating Horror. His profile picture is a little crow. So good.
Amazing.
And he did a video about the Woolworths fire. I think it was in like the 70s or the 80s. And it was basically a big department store. Woolworths was like huge in the UK. Like I used to go to Woolworths with my mum to get like pick and mix, like sweets, candy.
I got my first time I got you there.
Oh, love it. They don't exist anymore. It's a shame. But basically, a Woolworths department store went on fire, and it was horrific. And there was no alarm system, there was no sprinkler system, and so many people died. And it was needless. It didn't need to happen. But there was a survivor who said that she was running out, and in the cafe of the department store, there were people sitting and they were pretty chill. They were just kind of like, they were aware that people were leaving, but they hadn't been told they had to leave. And they kind of thought, well, whatever's happening, it's over there. But this survivor could see, because the fire's kind of weird. So the fire was like on the ceiling, and she could see the fire coming across the ceiling of this cafe. And she was shouting to these people in the cafe to leave, and they didn't move, and they all died. Like, it's wild. Like, people just don't, for some reason. And that fire, it was exacerbated by the materials of certain furniture, and what was used to like make them. And it meant that after that, when you bought furniture, there was, and I remember we had a dining chairs and table, and I was like small at the time, and I used to like crawl about under the tables and chairs, but hanging from the bottom of every single chair was like a tag, and it said like, which, you know, makes sense, keep away from fire. Like, you know, I wasn't going to throw my dining chair on a fire, but now I definitely won't. And the reason that they put those tags on things after the fire was basically to say to people, you know, if there's a fire and this chair goes near it, it's going to make it much worse, because the varnish that's on it is very flammable, or the stuffing in the seat cover is very flammable. So like the Titanic, something happens and regulations change because of it. This Wilbur's fire happened in the UK in like the 70s or the 80s, and a lot changed because of it. But then also people just didn't take it seriously in the moment because they thought it would all be okay. Yeah. And because of that, they died. So yeah, people's psychology is very complex, very complicated. And I think until you're in that scenario, as much as we're all like Titanic fanatics and watch weird YouTube channels about horrific events, you know, we might also fall victim to the, well, I've not been told to act, therefore I'm not going to.
Yeah.
Because
yeah, and I think it's just part of the mentality, because I've heard something similar stories. For instance, we had like a railway accident a few years back where eight people died, and of course, now that I'm undergoing education, we get some stories from people who were there, and one of those was like, my teacher was saying that he had asked one of his colleagues, like, what was it like when people got out there to the scene of the accident, and it was like quiet. People were just sitting in the train waiting. The train that had been hit by something on the bridge. They were just sitting there waiting. And so I can imagine, like, on a thing like Titanic, that, you know, people would be like, I don't know if you could call it like a shock state or something, but at least, like you say, just a waiting mode. Something like, you know, you haven't heard anything, you don't know how to act, because people act differently. Some people in the Titanic situation might have been like, oh, I'm going to help wherever I can, or something like that. And then others would have just been like, I haven't received any information. I'm just going to sit here and wait until I get some.
And it's quite a British thing to do as well, I think. You know, in the film, and it might be a bit problematic, but like Molly Brown is portrayed as, you know, she marches up to the steward and she says, you know, what's going on? You've told us to like put on our life belts, and now we're just fucking chilling. Like, come on. Whereas like the British people are much more kind of obedient and just being quite quiet about the whole thing. And, you know, and it is a thing, and it's so true. It's the one stereotype about British people that I'll be like, it's true. We're too polite to a fault. You know, I'll be walking over to a door that's like half a mile away, and someone will hold the door for me. And I'm like, now I've got to run, or now I've got to like speed up. And it's like, you could have just let the door close. Like, I wouldn't have spat you like in the face. Like, I would have just, you know, I don't care. But like, people are like really, really polite. And it's fine. But yeah, I can just imagine, God forbid you made a fuss. You know, there's like water up to your knees, and you're like, oh, I don't want to cause a scene. Like, you know.
What's the British saying? A tough upper lip. That's the one, I think.
yes, stiff upper lip, absolutely. But part of me does think if I was in that scenario, I'd cause a scene. I'd be like, yeah. And then I'd survive. It'd be like totally fine, and people would laugh at me and be like, lol. But you never know until you're in that scenario, and hopefully,
exactly.
Hopefully we never are. But yeah. So I need to dip out, but unless there was anything else, and like I said, this is another, if we come up with, because actually I think it's a good one to do every now and again, because it's not like a specific topic, it's not one that requires like research per se. It can kind of just be, you've read something recently or you've heard something and you're like, I can just want to discuss random little things here and there. So you know, this I think will be a topic that we do every now and again, which is nice.
Feels
Yeah.
like a lovely open topic, like it's nothing like fixed, like we've talked about light or any sort of other aspects, but you know, just tonight's conversation has taken us down all sorts of avenues. I feel it's been great.
Good, I'm glad. Was there anything else that people wanted to mention or bring up or kind of finish on? No, I hope you have all had fun. I've had fun. It's actually been so nice doing this again. With like a good, it has been a while, yeah. Did we all have a good summer? A good few months over summer, yeah.
That was all right.
It was all right, yeah. Mine was like fairly uneventful. Very hot though. Like Britain got that weird, like crazy heat wave. Which was
two heat waves.
Yeah. Gosh, it was but now it's like I'm looking outside, it's like raining and dark. I'm like, but I like autumn and I'm looking forward to Halloween. I like Halloween, so yeah, buzzing for some spooky season vibes.
Scary.
And we can watch Titanic 666 in preparation for Halloween.
Oh my god, yeah, we can roast it.
I don't know if you want to do that.
Time to talk Titanic reaction.
I've seen it, yeah.
Let's do a watch party. It'll be our Halloween episode.
I'll
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
I'll join in the watch party.
The fact that Titanic now has like a Halloween kind of film is just insane. But we've got it now, you know. We have Titanic 666. So.
It's Halloween. It's on topic. I'm seeing a lot of wins.
It's like when you were saying, oh, there should be a Titanic parody film. It's just like, oh, people might think it's disrespectful, but there is no way you can possibly be more disrespectful than Titanic 666.
Exactly.
They've set the bar, yeah.
Because at least in Ghostbusters, they were just ghosts. They weren't like flesh-eating zombies, you know? It
wasn't the captain of the ship. Like, that's a person. Like, you know who that is.
Yeah,
Ghostbusters is just a cameo.
I know. I love that scene in Ghostbusters. Such a good film. But yeah,
better late than never.
Watch along party of Titanic 666. And I think another episode idea I'd had was talking about our favorite depictions of either like the sinking or just the story in general. So that could be whether it was in a documentary, whether it was like a series of paintings, whether it was in a film. Because I think it'd be cool to discuss, because there's so much media, Titanic media.
Titanic in media is a very interesting one. I did my essay on that one. I think I sent it to you.
You did, and I really enjoyed it. And I did like a whole kind of list, like chronologically breaking down. There were some I missed out. I'd like to do like a second one because I didn't take into account like books, paintings. I think I mentioned the musical. Yeah, I did mention the musical. But yeah, so lots of, and we need to get the Charles Joffin actor on. Presley was super excited for that one, so I'm going to set that one up. And he seems like such a fun guy. Like I think he'd be like really up for that. So yeah, it's been fun, and hopefully not too long till the next one, people. Like I said, I'm recording next week with Jordan. I'll send out the invites just to everyone as usual. So if you're free, I can't remember if it's the Saturday or Sunday that Jordan said he was free, so I'll double check. But I'll just send them out to everyone, and hopefully you can make it. And if not, see you at the next one.
Very looking forward to it. It's been nice being back.
It's been nice.
I'm glad you were able to make it.
Yeah.
Very happy.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for introducing. You did a good job. Very good job.
Yes. 6 out of 6.
666. Right. Enjoy the rest of your evening or day. And yeah, see you soon. And we'll chat soon in the group chat.
Peace out.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Arron, I wanted to ask you something really quick.
Oh, sure. No problem.